Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Rostel, and with me today I have Fernanda Ortiz Rincon with a lot of R's. Fernanda, tell me how I can help.
Thank you, Klaus. You pronounced it very well. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, yes, I'm happy to be here with you today. And I think the topic is about personal innovation or how to reinvent myself.
Let's talk about that.
I'm at a point in my life where, maybe this is the only number I'm going to say. I'm 39 years old. And up until a year ago, basically, life had always happened to me. So all the decisions I made were out of convenience. So basically, living life in survivor mode, right? So I went to law school because that's the university where I didn't have to pay tuition because I would get in because I was great. So I would get in for free. Then I moved to Canada, and then I went into accounting and management because that's what would pay a good salary eventually. Then I moved to Europe, and then I did a master in innovation and management because that was the master that was in English and I could get in right away. So, of course, all great things. I'm not complaining, right? All great things. So I have studies in law. I didn't finish them, but then I have a bachelor in management
Nice.
and business administration from Canada. And I have a law was in Colombia. Sorry, a management in Canada, and then a master's in innovation and management in tourism in Austria. As I was working, I had a job in the same city where I was studying. I started, so it was entry level, it was a call center, but then I grew into the job. I was really good. And then within a year, actually ended up creating my own department. So I brought customer experience in. So it was just service, so it was also the whole organizational culture transformation. I drove that. So took it from service to experience, put the customer at the center, create a customer experience department. And from there came a whole lot of changes. So also we had to create training and development, performance management, etc., etc. So I liked the job that I was doing. I hated the industry that we were in, or that basically that made me dislike my job very much because it was gaming. Always that was always against my values. But I was a student. Then I was on a temporary visa. Then I needed the permanent residence and all of this. So I always kept saying, okay, this is the job that will secure me the visa because it's very difficult to get it and so on. So I stay there. Also very grateful that I had that opportunity and I grew a lot there. I ended up staying there for 8 years. So I was head of department, but I had a boss on top of me, but I had no mentors basically because my boss would consult me for everything, and I seem to be always like the smartest cook in the room, which is not a good thing, really, if you want to do. So I became very comfortable. It was a very easy job, etc., etc. Finally, last year I had the courage to quit and to just jump into the unknown. I had been toying with the idea of becoming self-employed and so on, but I needed the freedom from this job so that I could actually put my energy there. So I did it, I quit, and what happened? Well, all this time I had dreamt that the next day I was going to get up and become an entrepreneur. I was just trapped by fear. And I had so much fear, not knowing where to start, not knowing how to go. Fast forward a few months, I realized that yes, eventually I will create my own business. Eventually I will become self-employed, but I'm not there yet. And basically putting the financial responsibility on my creativity or in this beautiful idea, it's not fair to it. So I've decided that, it will still be there, but I cannot make it. So it's not yet. It's not ready yet. I still have more road to go. So I've decided that I need, and I'm ready to go back into the workforce, get a job. But this time, for the first time in my life, I want to go for something that I choose because I want to, because it excites me. Now, currently I'm living in Austria, in Vienna, and here's also where it comes to change. I'm moving to Germany because I've decided for a long time I've wanted to live in Berlin. Since I came to Europe, I lived there for 6 months, and I promised to myself that eventually I would return to Berlin. But because life was happening, I didn't. And I've decided, no, now it's the time. So I'm going to Berlin. I'm going to start a life there, and I'm going to get the job that I want and live life in my own terms. Now, what's the problem, or what I would like to hear from you and get your guidance is, I have this experience. So I've worn many hats throughout my career. I've done several things. I feel my background is quite broad. So, for example, when people ask me, what do you do? I always feel when I had the job, okay, my job title doesn't represent me. And how do I explain what I do? So it was always a long answer, or just I would say anything. But of course, most of my experience is in management, program management, customer experience, people and culture, etc. And I would like to find a way to basically, like, what's my pitch, or how do I pack myself? Like, I want to create this identity so that I very strong and confident on what I have to offer, so that I go for it. That even if I don't see a job poster, I can go and knock on doors and get me what I want. And yes, I know that most probably it's going to be in this business corporate world or in management, because that's where I have accumulated experience. But I'm also very creative. So how to bring that? So I'm an excellent problem solver, a strategic thinker, so strategic management, and anything that has to do with creativity. So I don't mean like arts and all of this. I'm not an artist, but just innovation and creating, planning, and all of those things. But I would like to have clarity. So here's the question, or the request. Klaus, please help me create my pitch, or this persona, what it is, so that I can really sell myself and believe it. So first, sell myself to myself, and start creating the life I want.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So that was the short version, right?
Because I always talk to my Latina. What can we say?
So thanks for that. Let's dive into that in a moment. But before I do that, I want to give you a compliment, and I want everybody out there who's listening to think, you may have heard some things and you may have noticed others, and you may already be having thoughts, but there's several things I heard, and one of them that really struck me. And I think more people should be like you, Fernanda, in this specific regard. Not the Latina thing. That's hard to change once you're different. That's hard to kind of choose. I would like to be Latina. Well, that ship kind of sailed. But when you talk about yourself, you say, I was good at that, or I'm great at this. And there are so many people, women especially, but also men, who are so afraid of saying what they're good at, even in coaching situations. And it's very good to know what you're bad at, right? Most of us are pretty good at knowing what we're bad at, knowing like, yeah, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at that, da, 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 da. But it's very rare for people to openly and honestly talk so confidently about what they're good at. And I think any of you hearing out there, do more like Fernanda. Be okay with what you're good at, because you're all good at stuff. There's things you're bad at, but you're all good at stuff. And hearing somebody, especially a woman, is talking about this and like, yeah, and I'm good at this and I'm great at this. It is so refreshing and so empowering. Thank you for that.
Thank you for pointing that out.
And now let's dive into the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's dive into that. So there are a couple of things at play here. The first is that I'm glad that you've taken that jump of saying, my whole life I've done things because it was easy or simple or necessary or seemed like the obvious one. And now I want to choose. I'm choosing Berlin. I'm choosing career. I'm choosing how to work. And it's also really nice that you acknowledge the fear. You said you jumped into being self-employed, and then you found out, that means nobody's telling you what to do, and nobody's paying the bills, and you're knocking on the door, and maybe there is no door, maybe it's just a wall, and it's up to you, all of it, right? And that can be scary. I became an entrepreneur when I was 23. That's half a lifetime ago, and I'm used to that. I've been in that for many, many years, but I cannot imagine what it would be like to get into it after a whole career within businesses just to step out and say, yeah, I'm going on my own. Or I can imagine, but I don't feel it in my bones, because for me, that uncertainty and chaos is just part of what it's like being adult. But I also understand that that can be pretty damn scary. And I'm glad that you made that realization pretty quick, because it means next time you do it, if you go back, which you plan to do, then you'll do it stronger and better and with open eyes. So I think that those months of, uh-oh, this is scary, will serve you very, very well in the future. So good choice there. Not circumstance, good choice, both to do it and to stop doing it. Now let's look at how we solve your major challenge, right? Let's look at this. What are you going to do? How do we create that persona? How do we make it easy to understand? And there are a couple of tools that are easy to access, and then there's some that are a little bit more esoteric. So we'll dive into both the easy and the little bit more tricky.
And I like esoteric as well, so bring it all.
So that is good. That is good. So the first thing to say, and this is something that I've come to realize more and more in my later years, contrary to earlier, is that so many people talk about, what am I good at? That's good to know. What am I passionate about? That's good to know. What can I make money with? What does the world need? The four pillars of Ikigai are good. Have you stumbled upon Ikigai before?
Yes.
Yes. So you have that as a guideline, which is great, right? The four Ikigai pillars are great. But one thing that I find is not discussed enough is, what does the world believe? What does the world think you can do? And those are not necessarily the same. So we're up against both finding out what do you actually want to do and what fits your expertise, but also what are you believable as, right? The fact that you're Latina and 39 makes you believable in some ways and very hard to believe in others, no matter what the facts are. If you say, I know something about diversity, people will believe you. You're a 39-year-old Latina woman, right? If I say it, nobody's going to believe me because I'm a 44-year-old white man. Now, I have been working with radical inclusion and radical feminism and gender identity and progressive stuff for 25 years. I know my way around that stuff, and I've done a bucket load of it. I don't know how much you have, but I know that I can hold my own in that sort of thing, but nobody believes it. And that means that I could go out and make a career as a diversity consultant, but it would be uphill every single step of the way. Because the first reaction people get would be, every time, middle-aged white guy, why would we hire you? Why should we listen to you? What do you know? Where if I go out and say, I know something about creativity, people go, of course you do. I know something about confidence. I know something about being bold. People go, yeah, teach me. And maybe I didn't, right? I happen to know something about that, but maybe I didn't. But the firsthand impression of both the person and the story, oh, it's such an uphill battle to sell that. And I spent many years without realizing that. And I was trying to sell something to people that I knew I was good at, but they didn't believe. And I didn't explain in a way they understood. And having kind of since gotten better at selling myself in a way people believe and understand, much easier, even if they're getting the same thing at the end of the day. I found out, I'll give you an example that I found out, that I was trying to sell innovation to private people, like do some innovation in your life. And it turned out a lot of people said, oh, innovation is great. We need it. And my company needs it. And Klaus, you're great at innovation. I said, okay, do you want to buy something? No, but other people should buy something. And turned out there were a lot of people who thought they should buy something from me, just not themselves. And the ones who did hire me almost always hired me on behalf of somebody else, right? They hired me so their board of directors could get more innovative, or so their sales team, or it was usually somebody saying, somebody else needs to be better at innovation, come help us. And then I tried switching to productivity. Then I said, okay, how about this playful productivity? Getting more done with less energy and less pain, but while having fun. And then I found a ton of people coming out of nowhere saying, I want that for me, because they all agreed that innovation was for somebody else, but productivity was for me.
Okay.
And it was the same thing I was doing, right? There was, whether we wrapped it in one or the other thing, if you want to raise productivity, the best way to do it is through innovation. So it was the same thing they were getting, but it was wrapped differently. And that meant a huge difference in who they felt it was for. So I think part of what we're talking about here is your packaging, as you said, is how do we package you in a way that people believe you actually want to do it, and that they think, it's not just right, it's right for me or right for us.
Yes, exactly.
So tell me what you'd like to do. Tell me what people think you can do. Let's start there.
Okay, that's where my system starts to crash. I, I speak a lot with my hands, and I guess that doesn't translate very well in a podcast. I need to put words to my hand signs. So I've come to terms with so until a few months ago, I couldn't find anything that I would like to do, because just the idea of going back to a job. So I had promised myself to never step into an office again. But things change, and I'm very okay with that, because it's not just about a job, it's about creating a whole life. So I'm okay with that. I think it's smart that I continue, or that I keep the things that I'm good at. So these things of program management, so I'm very good at driving visions. So, give me a problem. So I walk into a company, give me a problem. I look at it from all the angles. Yeah, look at the big picture, and then take care of all the details and, implement it. So the whole design thinking, so bring the solutions. That I'm very good at. Also, just driving initiative. So I'm very good at inspiring people, at moving people. Now, things that I'm good at, but I do not like, it's, for example, managing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's a big difference between program management and project management. Program management, I'm good. I can do it, because for me, it's all about driving visions and making things happen. Project management, for me, it has a time factor very attached to it. And I'm not very good with time, or understanding times and these calculations.
Mm-hmm.
So that I stay away from it. Now, so something that brings, whether it comes from a product perspective or a service perspective, but that how can we bring the humans to solve those problems, or to raise the productivity in humans, but raising the productivity by basically making the humans happy. So I'm talking like in the business world, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So by inspiring, by increasing the well-being, by providing them with a great employee experience, that basically how that can affect the bottom line. So basically, that's what I'm good at. That's how I see that could be a good start. Now, of course, you mentioned or hinted at diversity consultant. That sounds amazing. That already sounds like, okay, now we're going into dream territory. Now, and that's something that I have recently started to identify. I have a problem with dreaming. I don't know since when that started happening. And it's the moment I start just slightly dreaming of something, right away I start killing it with the planning and the realistic approach. So, diversity consultant, that sounds amazing. Oh, what certifications do I need? Do I need to study for that? Do I need to go back to university for it? Okay, how am I going to sell that if in my CV I do not have any other job experience as diversity something? And then that's the end of it.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to I now see there are two different Fernandas in this conversation.
Yes.
There is confident Fernanda who's like, of course I'm great at that. I've done that. And then I was so good that they asked me to do something else. Not in like an arrogant way, but just like, yeah, I know my stuff. And then there's Fernanda, the creator of troubles for herself, where if you say, I'd like ice cream this evening, and then it's like, oh my God, do I need to make it myself? Does ice cream even exist? Is it healthy? Will I get shot? Will I get deported? What's going on? Will my friends like it? And then no ice cream. Instead of just finding out, okay, what ice cream options are available, and just pick one, which is what normal people do.
Mhm.
But and I think I might be mistaken here, but I'm guessing, having just seen those two sides in the same conversation, that what allows you to be very confident sometimes also allows you to be very confident in destroying your own ideas.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's that's a very great observation. I will have to sit with it,
I should do coaching, right?
but maybe you're onto something there. I'll be sitting with it, but I'm sure you're correct. I'm very happy that you have identified this duality, because it is absolutely there, and I think it was already reflected on the process of getting to this call, right? Oh yes, for sure I want this call. Oh no, I'm not going up for it.
Yeah, and maybe share that backstory that before we ended on this call, what happened?
Yes, so actually what happened is, so you put the idea out there of doing this recorded coaching sessions to have the podcast, and I was all in. So I knew what I would like to get out of it, and yeah, why not? Cool, super. I wrote you, and then you created this group of the people that you were going to be working with, and then I started listening to the podcast and seeing the profiles of the people and going checking their LinkedIn profiles as well, and I intimidated myself, and I arrived to the conclusion that I'm nowhere near the I'm missing the word.
The level.
Yeah, like my profile is nowhere uh, close to the people that you were already working with. So I felt very inadequate, and this not even fear, the certainty of I have nothing to offer for this call. Yeah, it just took over. So I didn't reach out, I didn't schedule an appointment or anything until I'm very grateful you nudged me. You followed up with me what was going on, and then I was honest and I said, yeah, I think, seeing the profile of all these people, basically I feel less than. So yeah, I don't see how I could add value to that podcast. So basically I want out. I send it. The moment I send it, my other personality took over. I was like, why did you send that? Of course you have a lot of value to add. And I was actually looking how to unsend that message, and I couldn't find it. So I Googled it, and as I was Googling it, how to unsend it, you replied. And that's when you said basically that even talking about that would be good. And if I had liked what I had listened from the other podcast, it most likely would be a good one. So I like very much that exercise of going from a lot of insecurity to confidence and all the vulnerability in between. I'm super grateful for you nudging and actually me letting myself being nudged. But yes, I'm very happy that you identified those two sides, because that's true. Like, for example, today, if we're going to talk about job titles, anything that is people and culture, that's what I love. People and culture. Today, I was looking at quite a few jobs about it, and then like I'm reading everything, like, yep, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, that's me, that's me. Very good knowledge or good knowledge of the German labor law. No, okay, I cannot do that job.
Yeah.
Then I closed the door, and then today a friend told me, just take it as a wish list.
Bingo.
That's their list.
Yes.
Yeah, but out of their wish list, I'm missing one of the most important things. That's not me. So yes, that, and I keep myself. So going back to your observation, I find very strong arguments, or sometimes, yeah, my I make logical errors that are sometimes quite difficult for me to detect.
I think part of the challenge here is that you're too smart.
Mhm.
And that means that you do things that are not smart. Because when you do that, when you did that with the podcast, and especially when you do that with the job, instead of thinking, I'm going to apply, I just might get lucky. Then you think, oh, there's their wish list. I know it's a wish list, but probably somebody else is going to be more qualified, and I don't want to waste their time, and blah, 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 blah. And so you don't do it. So instead of going over and saying, hey, you convince yourself that it's going to go badly and you have good arguments because you're smart. And then instead of taking a chance on it, you just stop, and then it is guaranteed to go wrong. If you were single and at a bar, then you would spot a cute guy at the bar, and instead of going over to him and saying, hey, you would say, oh, he's probably married, because somebody that good looking and charming is going to be married, so I'm not even going to ask. And then when somebody else goes and talks to him, you're thinking, why didn't I even ask?
That basically also happens. So just in the professional world.
And part of that is that because you're smart and because you think ahead and because you are confident as well, you're that duality, your confidence is getting in your own way because you're certain this is going to happen. So instead of taking a chance on it, you just immediately fast forward to the result. And the reality is, just like with the guy at the bar or the job, yes, he might say, oh, very nice and kind of you, but here's my wedding ring. I'm just here getting a drink with a friend. Or he might say, well, hello, senorita. Shouldn't I buy you a drink? Thanks for coming over. We don't know. But we do know that the odds, if you don't approach him or you don't approach that company with the German labor laws, the good-looking guy in the bar in our example, right? Then the chances of them saying, you're exactly what we're looking for, even if we would have liked somebody who knew about labor laws, but you'll do great, then there's zero. There's zero of that happening because you're not giving them the chance. And I'm suspecting that there are several places in your life where you act so fast or think so fast that you immediately jump to the conclusion, and sometimes you're right, but sometimes you're wrong. But it's not obvious because whenever you jump to that conclusion, then you're immediately right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes, yes.
Did you get that job? No. Oh, they didn't want you, or they got somebody better? No, I didn't apply because they wouldn't have wanted me. Well, how do you know? Because you didn't apply. And the thing about trying, even when the odds are low, or even when the odds are 80% or 50% or even 10%, is sometimes you get lucky, number one. Number two is sometimes the unexpected happens, right? There are people, I have friends who've applied to jobs that they weren't qualified for, who've gotten them because the other people who were applying were even less qualified or non-existent, or they were super qualified in one part so they could ignore the formal education or the German labor knowledge or whatever it was because there was something else that was so powerful about it. So that can work.
Mhm.
The second part is some of them didn't get the job, but they got another job. Right? I've literally had friends apply for a job and they say, you know what, we've already found somebody for this that's better suited, but we have another opening that we haven't published yet, and you'd be brilliant for that. How do you feel about talking about that? Like, okay, I could do that. And then you have the third kind, which is people applying for a job or trying to do something. And then the person at the other end says, yeah, no, but then 2 years later, they call because of something else. Or they link you up with, hey, but my friend Marius has a startup and you might be great for that. Or because you never know. You never know what happens when you roll the dice. But you can be sure that if you don't, yes, you're going to spare yourself some pain. Yes, you're going to get rejected less, whether it's in bars or it's at German companies. But the easiest way to not get your heart broken is to not talk to anybody. But that doesn't really help that much because nobody likes that solution either, whether it's in jobs or in relationships or just in friendships.
Yes.
That if you never want to have your friends be annoying, then just have no friends. It's one of the beautiful examples from the start of the Freakonomics book that came out quite a few years ago. They start by saying what this book is about is by looking at economic solutions that are not obvious and looking at that sort of economics. And they start with the question, and I'm going to ask it to you there. Let's say you're interested in elephant welfare and you've decided you don't want elephants to suffer. What would you do? This is the question. How would you make elephants suffer less?
Mm, somehow, I guess I would start with making an inventory of the places where there is more elephant abuse, and to my mind, it's Asia because there's more density and they're to mix with the population. So how to create protected, so basically how to ensure the elephants have enough land for themselves so that there's no conflict with humans.
Excellent suggestion. Excellent suggestion. Do you know what they suggest?
What?
Kill all the elephants. Then they're not suffering. And of course, that's a bizarre answer because then we have the next problem, which is there are no elephants. But the moment you start looking at, in this case, economics from that perspective, then this is, of course, their crazy opening to get people like, oh, okay, I see where you're going. And one of the examples they have is that they were looking at, in the United States of America, they were looking at why were there falling crime rates in the early 90s. Why did youth crime suddenly start falling? And American analysts had things, and journalists had things, and TVs had, and they all had like, is it what the president's doing? And there were all this analysis going on. And then
The criminals are getting older?
no, the criminals weren't getting born because in 1972 or 73, the Supreme Court passed Roe v. Wade, which made it legal to have abortions. And abortions tend to have a social side to them that poor people in desperate circumstances tend to, more children of poor people in desperate circumstances tend to end up in crime, not because they're more criminal, but because if every day of your life is really tough, you're going to do more desperate things.
Mm-hmm.
Or the crime you're going to do is going to be more likely to get caught, right? The rich people have rich people crimes, the poor people have poor people crimes. And that meant that some of these people who had not been born because of free abortions after 72 or 73 were suddenly not showing up in crime statistics because they would have entered that. And you saw the same thing with universities or with schools, or that people who weren't getting born, of course, weren't joining the statistics.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
It's a little bit like looking out today and saying, what is the best way to, and then we'll get out of the statistics range in a moment, but what's the best way to make sure that your kid becomes a CEO? Well, in Denmark, if you look at it statistically, there are 5 times as many CEOs named Lars as there are women in kind of top companies. So in top companies in Denmark, the CEOs, there are 5 times more Larses than there are women.
Okay, well.
Is that because when you are named Lars, you become more likely to be a CEO? No, of course not. But CEOs in Denmark tend to be somewhere between like 50 and 60 and male and from certain social backgrounds. And if you go back enough time, you'll find that in that period, Lars was a common name. So if we did the same exercise in 50 years, then none of them would be named Lars. They would all be named Skjold or whatever is a popular name now, right? Our daughter is named Saga, and that's a pretty popular name these days. So in 50 years, there's a better chance that female CEOs will be named Saga, where right now, none of them are named Saga because nobody was named Saga 50 years ago.
Yes.
And once you start getting into that way of thinking a little bit outside the box, then you start reaching into interesting options. And to dial that back into where we came from is that this sort of the unexpected only works if you say, I don't know where this is going to end, right? And this, sometimes it's thoughts exercises, sometimes it's research, sometimes it's relationships, or sometimes it's conversations. But if you already know from the beginning where this is going to end, then you will never have the conversation where somebody says, let's just kill all the elephants.
Of course. Or if I fool myself into believing that I know how this and everything else is going to end.
Bingo.
I killed the elephants before even knowing that there was a question about elephant welfare or
yes. And I think you're up against your own elephants, that where the real economics you'd never kill the elephants in real life because then you have no elephants. They may not suffer, but they're not around. But I think what you do to yourself is you think, oh, okay, this I want to do. Oh, here's a possible hindrance. Oh, okay, it's going to go bad. So yeah, might as well just not do it.
Yes. Okay, so how How to reinvent myself, being, I guess, less smart that way
Less smart that way.
and more daring.
So part of it is to say, you're really smart, but that means there's a difference between having a good idea of what will happen and being certain what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're ever in doubt, then just take some dice out and roll them. Because, yeah, sure, you can, the odds are very clear, right? The odds of getting 3 6s in a row are 1 out of 216. So once you've hit 2 6s, 1 out of 36 for that odds, then you're thinking there's not going to be a third 6. But of course, it doesn't work that way. And the only way where you can be sure it's not happening is by not rolling the dice at all. So we need to get you out there and roll some more dice.
That's really great. That's a very visual example for me.
Roll some more dice on people, on jobs, on German workforce labor laws.
That sounds so attractive. But this, what you're talking about, reminds me something that I read recently. I cannot remember the author, but it's creativity can be both a blessing and a curse. Because if you are if you're very optimistic, so creativity, it will allow you to create worlds. And I do know that side of me, that I can go and achieve whatever I want. But that creativity, when not in the optimistic side, it's basically the same level of creativity, but for catastrophizing.
Mm-hmm.
So with the same level of detail, I can see how something is going to turn out wrong or not turn out or whatever. So to be very aware of that. And I had not thought about it since, or this way, that what I'm considering certainty is nothing but creative exercise of my mind that doesn't distinguish between negative and positive, I guess.
Bingo. Bingo. And I think when you're strong, it's because you have that strong persuasion, strong confidence, strong creativity. But when you're like in a little bit of a, oh, it's not going to work mood, then you can convince yourself that things aren't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And while both are equally true, it's much nicer to be overexcited than underexcited. It's much nicer to be over positive than under positive. We just need to give you some ways of tapping into that.
Yes. And throw the dice.
And throw the dice. And that means, for example, let's say we take this being a diversity consultant.
Yes.
And you're thinking, oh, but do I need this or do I need that? Or, oh, the worries come in. Where if you tomorrow on LinkedIn write, hey, I'm considering doing some more work with diversity. And I'm 39, I'm a woman, I'm Latina, I live in a different country than where I was born. I also have a long history of leading teams and of empowering people. And one of my skill sets, one of the things I can honestly say I'm very good at, is driving vision and empowering teams, because I've learned, as many of you have, that when the team is happy, then the customers are happy. And I'm looking to do some consulting on that. Now, I don't know if any of you could use a hand in that, but in case you're thinking, half an hour meeting with her might be interesting, well, let me know. I'm not charging for it yet, smiley, but I'm here to talk. Let's say you post that tomorrow. Maybe nobody's going to answer. Maybe it's just going to be silence. And then what? What did you lose?
That's what my mind already told me.
Yeah. So if you don't post it, it's going to be silence. And then what? Nothing happened. It's not like people are going to call you up in a week and say, hey, Fernanda, I saw that post. You didn't get any responses. Ha, 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 ha. Not coming to the dinner party. Ha, 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 Fernanda. That's not how it works. Where if you do get some responses, well, then maybe you're going to do stuff. And if you get some people liking it, then they're going to assume that other people are taking hold of you, even if nothing happens, because it plays into their idea of who you are and what you can do. So worst case scenario is nobody cares or notices. Second worst case scenario is people notice that nobody cares and they think, yeah, what does she think she's doing? But that's realistically not going to happen. And even if it is, then you write, okay, well, then you have a follow-up post saying, I tried something new, it didn't work out. I guess one of the fun things about reinventing yourself is you try out stuff and then you move on.
Wow.
So now you have your excuse, and you have how you react if it goes badly. And it's not like they're going to cancel the dinner party or come beat you up anyway.
Yes. Wow.
And it just might work. It just might work, right? Imagine somebody seeing that that's worked with you before or just randomly happens upon you and say, hey, I'd love that. When can we book a meeting? And suddenly you're a diversity consultant.
Wow. And just second, this also works for in person, because what I'm getting is also people telling me, oh, I know this person and this person in Berlin. I'm going to connect you, which is great. And anybody will be excited. In my mind is, oh, okay, well, I guess from there is comes this need or this want of knowing how to package myself, because like, okay, I have a meeting with this person or go for a dinner and there's a networking situation. He's creative director of this agency or whatever. That's another thing that I was looking at, to get in a creative agency. What am I going to say? But just like the way you word it or the way you approach it, that already sounds like, it's honest. So I'm not selling hot air. It's honest, it's clear, and it's just putting it out there. So really just throwing the dice.
Just throwing the dice. And if we go back to our guy at the bar,
Mm-hmm.
right? If he's the only guy and it's the only bar in the world and you have one chance of impressing him. Now, you can't change if he's married or not. That's not up to you. But you might, when you come roller skating in and slamming into the bar dead ass drunk and saying, hello, senor, then you might not be that impressive. So here, yes, if that's the case, then it's good to kind of put a little preparation into it, stack the odds a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is there are many guys in many bars. And you can even probably come to the same bar a few days later and there'll be another guy there. And for many, many of the things we do, we fail to accept how many guys there are. Right? If you're in the World Cup and it's the finals and you're shooting the penalty kick and your name is Cristiano Ronaldo and it's the last game of your professional career, you're gonna, if you miss, that's not good. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's the first time you're ever in a football training thing and you miss, the consequences are very low. And part of that is that because your mind skips the consequences and goes to the expected result, it doesn't stop and say, okay, so what if I'm right? What's going to happen? Are they going to beat me? Are they going to kill me? Are they going to take my money? Are they going to hate me? No, none of these things. The worst thing that could happen in our example with the two posts is that nobody notices or cares, or some people think it's a little bit weird, but it's not like they're going to remember. Nobody's going to come up to you in 5 years and say, oh, you are Fernanda Ortiz Rincon. I once saw a post from you, and I thought, on behalf of Latinos everywhere, that is not how we do it. Shame on you. You destroyed Latin America. That's not going to happen, right? What will happen is probably nothing, or maybe something. So roll the dice and let's see what happens.
And with this example that you use of the only bar and the only guy in the world, or the reality that there's many, my cop, the movie in my head kept just going and going. And then it's like, if I keep walking into every bar I get the chance and actually approach the guy, eventually I come to the last bar at the end of the world with the very last guy. I have done it so much before that I'm ready.
Yes.
And I will not stumble drunk. I will be very prepared.
Yes.
Naturally, because I have developed that skill.
Yes. Yes. And they're not all going to be married. And some of them, you might even think, yeah, why did I approach this guy? He's terrible. But then it's your choice, right?
Yes.
But approaching the first one, that's the tricky one. Yeah.
By the way, I'm still talking about work, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Just so nobody's in doubt, we're talking about work. Fernanda is not going to all the bars in Berlin. That's not what she's doing. But it's the same psychology at play. Now,
Absolutely.
Fernanda, as we get to the wrap-up stage,
Yeah.
I want to compliment you again, this time not for your confidence, but for your courage. Thank you for bringing this to me, and thank you for bringing it to people out there. Because unlike what you first felt, I'm pretty sure that there will be people who, when you say that about the duality, when we talk about that, they're going to say, oh, that's exactly what I do.
Mm.
I'd never thought of it that way. Wow. That is so impressive that she took that there. Wow. Okay, I'm going to be inspired. So thank you for bringing this to all of us. That is very appreciated. And the second part I want you to do, and you'll know this if you've heard some of the other episodes, I want you to think of 3 things that you take away from this conversation.
Hey, okay. So thank you again for pointing that out and helping me reframe what I see as insecurity or cowardice as courage. Okay, 3 things that I take away. First, roll the dice. Roll the dice. End of the day is a game of numbers. So why not? That's the first thing. The second thing, I love the word that you use and the idea of these LinkedIn posts. So if I have your permission, actually, I would like to do it and
Of course.
can use your words.
Of course. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, because it was just so fluent and you just rubbed, I don't know how you do it. Like you just took everything that I talked and talked and talked and talked and put it so concisely and clearly there. So that's really great. That's the second thing that I get, that I take. And the third would be, that's complicated. Now I have 4, 5, 6 running in my head, competing for the third place. Okay, no, I'm gonna go with this one because actually my heart is beating faster. So I think that the others are very much of the head, but this one is a feeling. Being here, being in this space with you. And daring to, or actually taking, and it connects to the example that you gave at the beginning, that when you were trying to sell innovation, people were buying it for somebody else, but being in this space to, hey, how can I use innovation in my own life and reinventing myself and creating this space? That's extremely valuable, and how that personal innovation could be matter of, not reinventing the wheel, but see where the wheel has kinks and what's keeping the wheel from actually running smoothly. So yeah, that. And 3.1, that observation of being seen in something that I know very well of myself. I guess that's the power of being seen, of being witnessed. Being witnessed in that duality that I have, that has a lot of power, and you identifying that same confidence with which I approach things is what could also be keeping me from things. That's extremely important. And I will be observing that.
Thank you for sharing those, and happy that I got to help a bit. And
Thank you very much.
to all of you out there listening to us, thank you for being our wonderful audience. This has been the Innovation Coaching Podcast. You've heard Fernanda Ortiz Rincon and me, Klaus Wastel. Thank you for listening.